Check Podcasts. Hi, welcome to Chamber Chats. I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and we are coming to you, as always, from right here in the podcasting facilities of the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I would like to acknowledge, as always, that I live and work in the ancestral lands of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, the Songhees and Esquimalt, or Kosapsum. And this whole thing here at Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are redefining what banking can do for people, for communities, and for the world. When you look around the world, we live in a pretty nice place. We live in a beautiful area. We have mountains, we have ocean, we have water, we have it all here, really. But one of the features that makes us renowned around the world is our waterfront, in particular downtown in Victoria, the entire harbour area. We're going to talk about that today with a gentleman who has a great job and is doing a great job at doing it. Robert Lewis-Manning is the CEO of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority. Robert, how are you?
I'm really well. Thanks, Bruce. Hope you're well, too.
Yeah, we're a city with a great view, that's for sure. So, question we ask people quite often on the podcast is you meet somebody for the first time and they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority. And they go, really? What's that? What's your answer?
Yeah, sometimes it's complicated, Bruce. So the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, the first part is, of course, the greatest complexity of that is we have this word authority in our name, but we actually don't have any authority. 22 years ago, the government of Canada was getting ready to divest a number of its assets, both in harbors across the country and also airports across the country. And locally, a group of stakeholders got together and started to envision an organization that could accept these assets. And it was a wonderful group of people that really had a strong long-term vision about maintaining a working harbor in Victoria. And so they established this group. They came up with the name Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, understanding one day that it might actually become the administrator of the harbor. The assets were divested by the federal government. Many of them went to the Harbour Authority, but the actual authority didn't transfer. So as an organization, blessed to steward some incredible assets, all the way from the breakwater in the outer harbor, all the way up to the John Street Bridge, but didn't actually get the authority. So that it's really an organization of common interested parties, 8 of them, 8 member agencies, that continue to steward those assets today and long into the future, hopefully.
Yeah, the Chamber is one of those organizations, in fact, and we're a part of the process that built the Harbour Authority. And one thing that also we want to make clear, because of the name or whatever it is, people think you are government, but you're not.
Oh, and you know, sometimes it's great to be government and sometimes you'd rather not. And I'll be polite and by saying, I think it's great not to be government, even though a lot of people do mistake us as either a local municipality, a part of the city of Victoria or township of Esquimalt, and or the federal government. But the really wonderful thing is, as being a not-for-profit of 8 member agencies, is we remain agile and we can do things that I think if you were government, you couldn't do, and you can do them more quickly. And one of them is just adapting to a change. And I think over time, that's served the organization really well. It also really helpful because the 8 member agencies that make up the organization, which are the Songhees Nation, the Esquimalt Nation, the Capital Region District, the City of Victoria, the Township of Esquimalt, the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, the Destination Greater Victoria, and the Victoria Esquimalt Harbour Society, it's part of this great network in the region that can understand what's going on and can make decisions and move on things quickly. And it's that network that's really key to the organization's success in the past, and I think moving forward.
And without going down a big nerdy hole here, you are a harbour authority, but across Canada and across BC, we see people in places like Vancouver, Montreal, Nanaimo, Port Alberni. They are a port authority. You're a harbour authority. Is there a difference? Is it just a name, or is there a real difference?
There is. So in that divestiture process that I mentioned earlier, there were 18 port authorities established. Some of them you've mentioned, and they actually administer those ports under a piece of legislation on behalf of the federal government called the Canada Marine Act. In the Port of Victoria, in our wonderful home, that act applies, the Canada Marine Act, but it's administered by the federal government through Transport Canada. So that's the biggest difference. And we, as an asset owner in the port, have to work inside of that administration. So that's why we're not government, but of course we have to be intrinsically working very closely with all levels of government.
So the highest profile among your assets, I'm going to say, are the Inner Harbour Causeway, Fisherman's Wharf, and Ogden Point. So here we are in cruise season. Ogden Point is high profile as people flock down to see these amazing cruise ships come in. How's the season been so far?
Well, it's been another strong season, which is pretty exciting. We're coming off a record season last year, but we're seeing some really strong numbers. We're expecting about 315 ships to call this season. That equates to about 910,000 passengers. It could be higher. We're seeing, certainly in the first half of the season, most of the cruise lines are operating with capacities above 100%. And that sounds weird, of course, but in the cruise line business, 100% is just your staterooms bunks being filled. But when you have families in the summer, they can actually pull down bunks from the deck head, the ceiling, and increase their capacity above 100%. And that's happening across the board at the moment. So those numbers will probably be a little bit higher. In comparison to last year, where we were 326 ships and about 970,000 visitors. So we'll probably be less than that overall, but very strong numbers.
Yeah, there are elements within the economy that are still sort of in recovery mode post-pandemic. So you're kind of aligned with that a little bit with what you do too. Another part of what you do, though, you've got, I think it's 11 sort of marina type facilities scattered around as well. And I had spoken with somebody who said that that's been an interesting thing this year because of how windy it's been. Ships that would normally be coming in here from, across the strait or something. How much of a factor has that been in your business?
I don't think it's been a big factor. I mean, we're not, I said, we are very accustomed to windy springs and windy falls in Victoria. So that's not out of the norm, to be quite frank. I think the early part of the summer might have been a little bit more wet and cooler than last summer, and that's probably had some impact, but it's not drastic. And I think, we're seeing really strong numbers now. So usually if somebody held off in June because the weather wasn't so hot, they probably made up for it in July and August. And we're continuing to see strong growth. In the summer months, you don't see too many docks go empty. Our big festival periods are incredibly popular in the marinas. That continues right through the month of August and into Labor Day weekend. So yeah, it's I think we'll see a strong season, and I think the businesses that rely on our facilities are having a good year as well. And we see those numbers around the city and hotels. It's pretty healthy.
Yeah, the facilities, when you talk about them too, and the festivals and things, Ship Point is a place that actually had some use in January because your organization and ours were involved with Hockey Day in Canada. But Ship Point has been sort of upgraded a little bit too, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's really neat. We've seen that investment by the city of Victoria to activate that space, and we're seeing more and more events planned for that area, concerts, even day-to-day activities. I mean, you can go down there and take yoga at lunchtime every day if you want to now. So I think that's an exciting development. We're going to see opportunities come in the future through integrated planning that's going to help identify what that facility can be used in the future. And I think it's had such a historic relevance in Victoria, and I would like to see that continue. It's a place where I think society, local population can really connect with what's happening on the water in a practical way. The event that you spoke about in January was just outstanding. How can anybody miss the fact that Victoria was on the map nationally and accessible to 12 million viewers through Hockey Day in Canada? It was just a spectacular event, and a little bit ironic that we had snow that same week.
Yeah.
That kind of defeats the, look what we do in the winter, we go golfing, but I think it was pretty suiting considering we were playing hockey.
Yeah, we got through it. It was all good. So I want to come back and talk about that. But something you've mentioned within that partnership is the Songhees and Esquimalt nations are a part of what you're doing. And you're doing some very transformative and wonderful things with them. I want to talk about that next. Our guest today on Chamber Chats is Robert Lewis-Manning. He is the CEO of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority. And Robert, you talk about the partners that you have involved with what you're doing. You work very closely with Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And I really want everybody to know more about that. So please tell me about what you're doing with them.
I think if we talk about before talking about the future, you've got to talk about the past. So when the founders of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority were envisioning the future, they actually included both the Songhees Nation and the Esquimalt Nation in the governance. Both those nations have been part of the GVHA board since its inception in 2002. And so there's been elements of co-management built into GVHA long before that term had even been discussed publicly. I think moving forward, we don't see a successful future for GVHA that doesn't include our Indigenous rights holders at the front end of everything we do. And I use the term rights holders deliberately because they are rights holders. They are different from our other member agencies. They have inherent rights that are both traditional, but they're also inherent and captured in law. And we see the future, and hopefully with economic development included in that for all of our region, being basically led together with our Indigenous partners, both those nations. So whether you're arriving on a cruise ship from the United States, or you're arriving at the Belleville terminal, or you're driving off a ferry or arriving on a plane, I think that it'll be clear that our Indigenous partners are working directly with us to make this a better place and to steward it for the long term. And, sustainability is a word that's thrown around a lot, but it has very specific meaning to our Indigenous partners. And not only does it mean economic sustainability, but it means environmental sustainability, cultural sustainability, and all of that is going to be increasingly important. And I think will separate Victoria and make it very unique to people that are visiting our area. So we're excited about it. Neither the nations or ourselves know exactly what that looks like yet, but the commitment to co-develop is sincere, and I think it's been part of the organization's values since day one.
Yeah, when you consider the fact that the Inner Harbor was the original village site for Songhees Nation, that where the hotel is right now, the Delta Ocean Point was the village site. The site of the Empress, my understanding is that was an orchard. And of course, there were shellfish beds all the way across the water there. So that vision of the past is creating the vision of the future. But this is pretty exhilarating stuff, isn't it?
It is. And what's been really neat in sort of our discussions internally is looking at other models. In the Pacific Northwest, we have great examples of successful joint ventures and tribal businesses in the Alaskan cruise market that we think are very applicable and could be opportunities here. So those discussions are ongoing, and that visioning exercise will take place. We're going to do some really practical things in that process, and I'll just mention integrated planning. We're going to take a very holistic approach at looking at all of our assets, how they are used today, how they might be used in the future, and work with all our commercial clients, the public, in figuring out what that harbor of the future could look like, what it should like, and how we can meet those principles that we've discussed here today. So it's pretty exciting, and we're going to do it fairly quickly over the next 3 years.
Yeah, there's been conversations for quite some time now about, for example, the transformation of Ogden Point itself, where the cruise ships come in, and the idea of an Indigenous interpretive center being presented as a possibility too. But that is a welcoming portal into Canada at Ogden Point. I want to talk about that next. Our Chamber Chat guest today is Robert Lewis-Manning. He's the CEO of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority. So for a long time, I've been here 23 years on Vancouver Island. For most of that time, there's been conversations about what could and should happen at Ogden Point. It's a bit of a show point for the area. And with all due respect, some would say it's not the most welcoming part of coming into Canada is getting off a ship and walking through that. But conversations are underway, right? Tell me where that's at.
Yeah, so it is. I just stress it is an incredible location. It's the last piece of undeveloped industrial water frontage in British Columbia. And it needs to be said because it's strategically relevant. And whether you are arriving on a ship as a passenger, whether you're walking the breakwater, or whether you're moving cargo, which we do from time to time. It's a place that's important. And I think we want to capture that in a way that attracts investment. And so the visioning that we have been doing in order to have a very clear pathway to developing our assets in a responsible way is really about providing some assurance in the marketplace and that there will be opportunity in Victoria for the long term. And how do you do that? Well, you make sure you have a wonderful facility that you can develop, that you've got the management to support it, you've got community and stakeholder support, and you're sending clear signals in the marketplace that you're looking for partners. So that's really where our team is focused right now. We're starting to have discussions with interested parties about what that might look like. But it is something that will be included in our integrated planning in a way that there can be more input and more discussion about what those opportunities may look like. And I think if you've gone down there on a day when 3 ships are in, you'll absolutely know that a lot of Victoria businesses are looking at that opportunity, and they all need a clear sign and signal about what the future looks like. So that is going to be a process of integrated planning, and it's also something that we are working jointly with our current terminal operator in order to have a clear strategy on how we will develop that facility. But it is breathtaking. It's a wonderful place. I might add, it's also a migratory bird sanctuary. So there's incredible social, cultural, ecological value of that entire area that we need to preserve as we continue our discussion about development, and hopefully move relatively quickly in making that a wonderful facility that serves businesses in the region, and also is somewhere that everybody can be proud of and use.
Yeah, because the transformation itself and the amenities associated with that are not strictly related to cruise. It's the other things that you mentioned, like cargo, and there could be or to other opportunities to grow business on site too. So it's not just focused on cruise, right?
It isn't, although absolutely cruise is an incredible opportunity and is expected to grow in the region. And the interesting things around sustainability is it's that same cruise sector now that has the first Green Corridor project in the world for cruise. Is happening in the Pacific Northwest. Victoria is part of that initiative. And, we're looking at alternative fuels. We're looking at electrification, as you well know, Bruce. It's been an objective of GVHA for some time. And all of that is connected. It connects a very local part of the Vancouver Island community with the world. And sometimes that's hard to imagine that we're actually competing in a global marketplace, but we are competing in a global marketplace. And last year we saw some examples of that, where we were providing maintenance support to ships that needed it very quickly because they'd had some challenges. And we had a cruise ship that was in that kind of situation. And we competed globally for that business and won it in partner with a local shipyard. And those are the types of growth opportunities that we really hope to expand on in the future.
And when you mention electrification, that's kind of popping up everywhere in the conversations we have with Fortis, BC Hydro, and all the others. But in your point, it's shore power is what you're talking about, right? And that's coming, right? It's coming along. We're all dealing with trying to increase our access to a larger power grid. But tell me about the progress of shore power.
So we recently took a business case to our board of directors in the summer, and what we came away with was the fact that, one, we've still got some more work to do in that analysis. So we still have some funding gaps. Like many things in the economy, they've got very expensive, and electrification is one of them. So we've got some funding gaps that we need to figure out. The second thing is looking at some of the emerging technologies. So there are some emerging technologies that we've determined deserve to be examined a little bit more closely before we have a final decision. And we're doing that work right now with some of our partners, and we will be presenting the final business case to our board next summer.
I'm one of the people who rode my bike down to Ogden Point to look at the container ship when it was there. And you mentioned that there is some cargo transfer that's happening now. How much can that grow? What can happen with that?
I don't think you're going to see a big container terminal in Victoria anytime soon, but there's some niche businesses that I think are really interesting. It's not unusual to see yacht charter and yacht movements happening on ships out of Ogden Point. We're in a good position geographically, so the opportunity for transshipment, and that's sort of moving cargo from one ship to a different ship. Like we had a couple of cases in the last year where a larger ship brought parts over from Asia. They were transferred to smaller ships for distribution in smaller US ports. We see some opportunity for growth there. It won't be huge growth, but there are some opportunities, and we're just in the right place geographically to do some of that. And then we have some of these incredible things that happen already. We're a depot for a cable laying company. They do repairs to undersea cables. There's not many places in the world that do this sort of work, and Victoria is a depot for that. So, when your communication line goes down between here and Asia and it needs to get fixed, it's very probable that cable is coming out of Victoria at our hangar, going onto a cable laying ship and then being deployed into the Pacific. The other incredible thing that happens in Victoria, and I would really love to see this expand, is there's a partnership between Maersk Shipping and Coca-Cola called the Ocean Cleanup. And they literally have vessels that have huge nets. They go out into the Pacific Ocean and they collect plastics that have accumulated in certain places in the Pacific Ocean. They bring it to Victoria where it gets sorted and then shipped out for processing. And to me, this is just a great story that aligns with a lot of the values of our local community. And it'd be nice to see that business expand. And we're hoping that we can do that in partnership with these companies, so that we can, again, make Ogden Point somewhere is strategically relevant and giving back to society. So that's a win-win story.
I mean, things like that are happening gives us a reason for civic pride to say, hey, did you know we do that here? Yeah, we do that in Victoria. They do it at the Harbour Authority, as a matter of fact. So, Robert, thank you for the update. We'll do this again soon because there's a lot of things we didn't touch on, but people now have new things to think about when they make their way down to Fisherman's Wharf for the Inner Harbour or Ogden Point or wherever it might be. Thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much, Bruce.
Robert Lewis-Manning is the CEO of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority. And I'm Bruce Williams. I'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.